Well, it tells you a lot that when the government ministers stand to defend the answers given in question time, they spend most of their time talking about the opposition. So I'd suggest that's a bad sign for the government. And the other bad sign for the government is that the government have very few policies so far that I can see emerging as their agenda for the next election. And all they've done in the past 2 years has been to feather the nests of the fellow rent seekers and the bloodsuckers and all the other fellow travellers that help them with their internal political machine. That's all they've done. It's been a government for vested interest for 2 years, and the big test for this government now is, can it pull together, can it thread together a coherent policy agenda that it can put to the Australian people that will solve the problems of today, the problems that are facing the people out there, outside this building, inflation, housing, because as far as I can see, according to the data released today, the problems are getting worse, not better. Inflation is getting worse, not better. And you can talk about wages growth, but what people are really interested in is real wages growth. And while inflation is eating the wages of workers, Labor have very little to say. Now, I wanted to comment on the question that I asked today, the question I asked to Senator Gallagher about housing. Now, unfortunately, we are going backwards on housing. And you can laugh all you like. I take the interjection, and it's callous and cold. Callous and cold from Labor and Senator O'Neill. I take the interjection. So, and I take the opportunity. I take the opportunity to remind Senator O'Neill and the government members that in 2018, under the coalition, there were 220,000 houses built, and this year there will only be about 170,000 houses built. So, after spending billions of dollars on boondoggle bureaucracies for the unions, the government is building fewer houses than before. The government is building fewer houses than were ever built under the coalition. So this is the problem with this government. It is so focused on feathering the nests of the rent seekers and the unions, it has no time to solve the problems of today. And the key problem facing so many Australians is the ability to get access to a first home. And Labor could not give a rat's. All they're worried about is how they can feather the nests of their rent seekers in terms of policy and in terms of dollars. So after having spent billions of dollars on boondoggle slush funds, we are going backwards on housing, and you can step through all the policies. On supply, the government has two policies, the Housing Australia Future Fund and the housing targets, both of which are huge failures. And it shows your willingness and the willingness of government members to feel the need to constantly interject because you are so embarrassed about the failure to fix housing. You have made housing so much worse, and that is hugely regrettable for Australians who want access to a first home. This has always been a country where a person on an average wage can buy a home, but not anymore. And that is the problem facing so many Australians, and all the government has is callous and cold responses. Then we move to the demand side. We have the Help to Buy scheme, which was in fact abandoned last week in the New South Wales budget by the State Labor Party, which has said actually shared equity schemes are so bad and so unpopular and so horrible that we're going to remove this scheme. The only demand-side policy the government have here in Canberra is Help to Buy. The centrepiece of their election announcement from 2 years ago, still not legislated. And guess what? No other ideas on the demand side. Now, we have a demand-side policy that's out there, which is for people to use their own money. And the reason that the government won't countenance this is for the same charge I always lay at their feet, which is that it is a government for vested interests. It is a government that only gets out of bed for its favourite fellow travellers. And the reason it won't consider this idea is because it will hurt the super funds. The government cares more about the super funds than the government cares about people. This is a government for big super funds and unions, not a government for people, and it's disgusting.